So rule number one is we need to set clear goals. So what are your goals for 2020? Anyone want to chime in on that? What kind of goals do you have in place for the new year? Doesn't have to just be sales goals. It could be getting a certain number of crews. It could be getting certain systems in place. What kind of goals do you guys want to put together? Eric, Susie, Dave, what are your goals? Eric says to make more money. All right, Eric. So let's go ahead and get into it then. So clear goals. The point of this is when you have clear goals, it's like having wind in your sails, because every time you reach a goal, it gives you that extra confidence and push that you need to get to the next goal. And so that's why we do it. And there's been a lot of study on setting goals, and one was by Harvard. And so in Harvard in 1979, they did an interview of their graduates. 84% of the graduates in 1979 from Harvard set no specific goals whatsoever, they said. 13% of them had goals, but they were not written down. So they just kind of had an idea of what they wanted to do, and that was their goal. 3% had very clear written goals and plans to accomplish them. And here's the results. The 13% of the class who had goals were earning on average twice as much as the 84% that had no goals at all. And even more staggering, the 3% who had clear written goals were earning on average 10 times as much as the other 97% put together. So that's huge. Let that sink in for a moment. What that's saying is that if you just take the time to write down your goals, just write them down. If you take the time to do that, then the odds are way more in your favor that you're going to be making more money and that you're going to be running the business that you've always dreamed of. So that's important. And this study is done by some of the greatest minds that we have. All right, awesome. And so Dave chimed in. Thank you, Dave. He said his goals are, it's a new company. He wants 3 full-timers, 100K in revenue by the end of the year. And so that's awesome. Oh, if you're not finding the download, you should actually look in the bottom left corner. It should download automatically to your computer. So you should see it in the bottom left. Just real quick, I just want to make sure this is working for everyone fine. So let me go ahead and try it. My internet connection is running a little slow. I'm hoping we're not having an issue with this. So if I click download here, boom, in the bottom left, it should just download into the browser, or even if you're on a smartphone, you can still download it, and then it should look like this. You should have a nice worksheet that you can print out. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get back to the slides, and hopefully you're able to pull that up okay, Dave. If not, we can always email that out to you after the webinar. All right, so I need to get back to the slides here. Bear with me 1 second. And We are there. Okay, perfect. So the goal setting framework, let's cover that. You have to have written goals and plans. You need to set a minimum of a 1-year goal, and then quarterly goals, and then monthly goals. And so what we're going to do now is go over our goals. We're going to write them down together. You must have a stopping point at the beginning of each new year and end of each quarter to reflect on how did you do? You know, based on what you set for your goal, what are your goals going to be moving forward? And you know, if you set a goal and you way overshot, then you know, maybe just kind of refine it a little bit. Don't beat yourself up too hard if you don't reach a goal. You should be patting yourself on the back for doing these exercises, showing up to this webinar, and just taking time to think about your business and set these goals. Okay, so that, don't worry about the rest. Let's just do the work. All right. So some goals that we're going to discuss is like, what is your revenue target? And some of you chimed in on that. Dave said 100,000. Awesome. How much is that monthly? Okay, so you want to figure out what that is monthly. And then, you know, to get that, how many calls, how many leads is it going to require? What is your average transaction value when you sell a fence service? You know, when you do an installation of wood versus aluminum versus wrought iron, different things like that. So we need to factor these in. So let's do it. So we're going to use some numbers here. These are just hypothetical numbers. Your numbers are going to be different. But let's discuss, you know, what is your revenue target? Let's say you put down 1.5 million as your target. Okay. We need to figure out what that is monthly. So divided by 12, we got 125,000 per month. What is your average transaction value? So put a number in that you're comfortable with. It's always better to be conservative, right? So if you're selling a fence for 2,000 here, 8,000 there, 3,000 there, we need to kind of ballpark of what's the average transaction value going to be. To do that, maybe you could take the last 3 months of fence sales, look at the total number of transactions you have, delete the, you know, the absolute top one. If you sold one that's like 50 grand more than you normally ever get rid of that. And maybe delete the bottom one or two if they're like really, really low, like it was a project that really you normally wouldn't take, but you just kind of did it. So we're trying to get a median here, an average. So you get that, 4,000 we'll say is the average transaction value. Then, how many leads are required to make one sale on average? And so we're not talking about a closing percentage here. We're talking more so about the conversion of actually getting a lead. Actually, we are talking about the conversions. My bad. We're talking about the closing percentage. So if it takes you 5 leads, 5 estimates to close a fence sale, then you know you would have a closing percentage of 20%. Okay, so the math on this is to reach our goal of 125,000 per month. If it takes us 1 or 5 leads to make 1 sale, then we would need 156 leads to make 125,000 in a month. So your closing percentage is going to be different. Maybe it takes you 3 leads to close a sale, or 2 leads. But you want to factor that in, because not every lead, not every person that calls you on the phone is going to buy a fence from you. So you want to get the average there. and see realistically, give yourself some cushion. How many leads is it going to take you to hit that revenue goal per month? And here's what I was looking for, is how many calls will generate one real lead? So if for every 2 calls you're getting 1 real lead, then you can factor that in as well. So that's what we're going to do in this example. We're assuming that it takes 2 calls to actually generate a real lead or an estimate. And so all in all, we're going to need 312 calls or leads to close $125,000 worth of business per month. And so once we have reverse engineered this, that now we know how many leads we need to close our total gross sales per month. So then we just need to develop a marketing plan that's going to do that. And that can include the website and SEO and social media marketing on Facebook and different channels to siphon traffic from these different sources to generate the leads that we need to close the business. So how many leads will you need? What is your average conversion rate from a caller to a booked estimate? And what's your closing percentage? So if 5 people call you on the phone, or they fill out a contact form, how many of those are actually going to turn into a booked estimate? And then out of those booked estimates, so now they got the price, they've got the measurements, the price. Out of those, how many are actually going to close out of 5?